Hello there, it's the Krusty Cupcake here, and we're doing a different kind of video today. We're going to do a technology video. Here we have the Rosewill Rise Full Tower PC case. Now, it is a full tower, but depth-wise, it is a mid-tower. The Rosewill Rise has the height and the width of a full tower chassis, but the depth of a mid-tower, which means you can't fit as long as a graphics card in there, but it's got about 14 inches of clearance for a GPU, so if you find one longer than that, it's a bit crazy. But the depth needed in a full tower case can sometimes be a problem with cables. I know, say the cables aren't usually long enough, and that can be a problem. Now, the Rosewill Rise is equipped stock with three 120mm airflow fans in the front and one 140mm airflow fan in the rear. They are situated with the three in front as intake and the one in the rear as exhaust. On the front of the case is a removable dust filter, which is held onto the top with two clips. It comes down and out like so. It has a very fine mesh with a honeycomb design behind a metal grill. Behind the mesh are the three 120mm fans. The mesh is secured by the two clips on the top of the chassis, but with a secure point where you can attach it with this thumb screw so that it cannot be removed behind the front panel. But for ease of removal, the thumb screw can be removed and left off while the clips securely hold it in place, for ease of removal to clean and wash after a couple months to make sure that your PC runs nice and smoothly and doesn't choke itself with dust. On the top is a similar dust filter, one that is detached and attached in the same manner. It is removed in the same way and can be held on by the same thumb screw. It comes with two of them, one for the top and one for the front. The I/O on the Rosewill Rise is a full set of 4 USB 2, 2 USB 3, microphone and headphone, as well as a reset and power button. Around the reset button is a clear ring for hard drive activity. Around the power button is a clear ring for power activity. When the system is turned on, the power ring will be blue. Along the side, the Rosewill Rise has a darkened plastic window. The window is not full length of the computer case, but it is quite large, showing much of the interior. To remove the side panel, there are 4 thumb screws located about 4 inches apart on the back of the panel. To remove, you simply slide back and pull it away. Inside of the case, as you can see, I have a build. This build is very temporary and is only being used to run game servers. At the front of the chassis, we have a 3.5-inch or 2.5-inch drive cage. It can be removed from the bottom by 4 thumb screws. Inside, you can house 2 drives on these removable sleds. In here we have one 3.5-inch hard drive. They simply snap in by plying the sides to the left and right, sliding in the drive, and then pushing the pins into the holes. They are completely toolless for 3.5-inch, but for 2.5-inch drives, you'll have to screw them in through the holes on the back. They're very easily removed and simply slide back in and hook into place. Along the bottom is the power supply mount with a included grill to protect the power supply mount that you aren't using. As the Rosewill Rise being a full tower, with that extra height, it has one at the bottom and one at the top. Being situated as a typical tower, the grill comes pre-installed on the top. While I have situated the power supply at the top for this build, I have moved the grill to the bottom by simply removing 4 screws from the back and moving it to the bottom. Now, one gripe I did have with this case is that it came with a large white sticker that was over the air intake for a fan down power supply that is mounted. Now, the sticker, which I was hoping would be very easily removed, turned out to be an hour of Goo Gone and scraping with a knife. I did not remove all of the stickiness, but I did remove most of it from the grill, so not to obstruct any power supply mounting. I feel like it was a really bad choice to add this. I mean, it took an hour to remove the sticker. It was a paper sticker. You don't put paper stickers on metal. They cannot be taken off easily. Now, with the proper cleaning supplies and a knife, you can very carefully remove it, but I suggest heating it with a hot air gun or a hair dryer to remove it. Now, along the bottom, there are mounts. 4 spots covered in rubber to prevent vibration being transferred from the power supply's fan to the PC case, as well as a strap. So during shipping, if the 4 screws aren't enough to hold a longer power supply, such as a 1200 watt and larger, a Velcro strap is here so that you can tie it down. Situated along the bottom, and I'm going to turn the light off for this because the balance inside isn't enough, or I'll move it to the top here. Situated inside the PC case is a very large 4 by 3 inch hole, so you can put all of your power supply cables through that hole. There's also one behind the hard drive cage for easy access via SATA power and SATA cables. Now, the Rosewill Rise has 8 PCI expansion slots, as well as a 8 plus 1. It has 8 main slots and 1 optional slot. Now, some ASRock motherboards come with a USB 3 expansion. The expansion can either be mounted in a 5 1/4 inch bay or via PCI. Now, this would be a perfect slot for it, as it would be along the edge and can be very easily accessed. Here is the rear 140mm airflow fan, as well as cable management for this case. Now, I'm going to situate a light in here so we can have some viewing light. Here we have 1 large grommet, as well as 3 smaller ones. The 2 smaller ones on the right-hand side would be used if a larger eATX motherboard was put in this case, as it does support it. You could use these to move the power cables through, but as you can see, I have used them to hide the cables for the 3 120mm fans. Now, because this power supply's 24 pin is so short, I could not have put it behind the motherboard tray, going through the large grommet at the top. The power supply cable is just too short. But for all of the other cables, it was very easy to move them behind the motherboard tray and secure them back there out of sight. One nice thing about the Rosewill Rise is that all cables included with it are covered in black all the way along the length, except to the last ½ inch, where it's pretty much a non-issue. I have not cut off the AC97 audio connector, but I do plan on doing it. Now, since this case does come with USB 3, I have that cable situated right here behind the motherboard tray, tied down via Velcro back here. But this motherboard does not support USB 3, so I do have it stowed back there. Now, moving on to the back of the case, we're going to look at some cable management. Up at the top, you can see that we have the power supply with the cables mounted at the back so they can be more closely along the motherboard tray. Now, moving the cables, I would recommend a bottom-mounted power supply because there is a large cutout here, so you can push the cables through and then route them back from behind through the grommets onto your build. With the top mount, there isn't a very large cutout here to put your cables behind the motherboard tray. There's only this small grommet here to put them behind and then bring them out next to the motherboard. This is one thing that could have been fixed with this full tower case, but really isn't much of a gripe. Now, situated along the back, we also have two more cable management holes, or water cooling grommets, for cables or water cooling tubes to be situated outside of the build. Moving along to the back side, the same goes with this as the left side panel, where removal is simply removing 4 thumb screws and then sliding the panel towards the back of the case and removing it. Setting the panel carefully aside, we can see the back of the motherboard tray for the Rosewill Rise. You have an extremely large cutout here for easy installation of aftermarket coolers if the motherboard is already installed into the case. Behind the motherboard tray, there are two 2.5-inch drive mounts. Here you can see I have one inside. The drive mounts are removed by removing a bottom left screw and a top right screw. The slides then slide in and are secured via 4 screw holes, just like any other 2.5-inch drive. As you can see, they mount very flatly against the case and would be able to support up to the largest 9mm thick 2.5-inch drives. This one is about 8mm, and the SATA cables, by using a straight SATA cable and straight SATA power cable, can be very easily mounted along the back side of the case. Down here at the bottom, you can see we have the very large cutout for adding your SATA and SATA power to your hard drives. Here's the larger one for moving your cables from the power supply to the back of the motherboard case. Here's that USB 3 connector, which is, with the other cables, coated in black paint, or with black cables all the way along until the end blue connector, which would then slide into the motherboard. It was easily secured behind here with the Velcro from the power supply strap. Here we can see something that wasn't included in the description for the Rosewill Rise on Newegg or any other site. It is a 9-fan connector for 3-pin fans. It is a 9-fan, it's not really a fan controller, but it is a connection hub powered by one single 4-pin Molex connector. It can power 9 fans, each of them being 3-pin, or a 4-pin fan, but it is not PWM. Now, I have plugged in, because this motherboard only has one fan connector, and I have plugged that fan in there with an optional fan that I had from a previous system, I have plugged the 320mm fans into it, as well as the rear 140, and powered it with the Molex. This powers the fan at full speed all the time, and can be quite loud. I would not recommend it if you want a silent build, but if you would like max airflow, this is a great way to go, as you can hook up 9 fans, 3 in the front, 3 on top, without a 5.25-inch drive, as well as I don't believe you can add one on the bottom, but one in the back, and if you so choose to, a push-pull in the front or a push-pull on top, as long as your motherboard supported it. Now, the large grommets for the cable management are very nice for routing the cables, as well as cable tie-down points that are along the back of the case. There aren't as many as I would like, but there are enough to stably secure down the cables via twist ties or zip ties, with 3 of them being included with the case. Over here you can see we have a cutout for the 8-pin CPU power connector, which would be used if this motherboard required it, but this one only requires a 4-pin, which I mounted and routed through this hole and over to the motherboard.